morning again. It's getting a bit warmer in South Africa, but I've still got my jersey on. Everybody calls this my grandpa jersey. I don't give a shit, but anyway. Yeah, I've just given you a weather update because it's very important to know these things. All right, got my coffee as well. Okay, so let's talk about the soul. Not the soul train, just the soul of the body. This is one of those topics which is extensive, is complex. Everybody tries to pin something on it. It's like pin the tail on the donkey, really. Some people believe in the soul, some people don't. Some people believe that you just have a soul and that's it. Other traditions and paths, they actually split the soul into different parts. As I say, it's one of those topics which is very extensive, and I would suggest that you go study it. It's obviously a very important part because it's your soul. It's part of you. It's part of your being. And in magic and spirituality, you do work with it. You work with it quite a lot, actually. But two traditions that I always found interesting was Kabbalah and the Northern traditions in regards to the soul itself. So in Kabbalah, the three main parts of the soul. I mean, you've got other parts of. I'm not really sure if we can call them parts of the soul. There are more parts of the soul, but certain Kabbalists speak about. But we've got the shadow body, which could be suggested as being part of the soul. Some people might not suggest it's part of the soul. They may just suggest it as part of the energy body itself. In some traditions we speak about the astral double and things like that. But I'm just want to get into the main aspects here. So in Kabbalah we have the three main parts of the soul. Those are the Nefesh, the Ruach and the Neshama. So the Nefesh is the lower self. And this is considered to be the irrational self. Irrational in the sense that it's instinctive. It doesn't retain memory. It just basically experiences everything. I guess in many senses we can liken this to the subconscious, in the manner that the subconscious doesn't have filters. So everything we experience throughout the day, we just absorb, we just take in. But we do have filters in place which filter out a lot of the stuff. Otherwise, the amount of information that actually enters our brain would just completely overwhelm us. But the Nefesh, in the same sense, is this irrational self that doesn't have filters, just experiences everything. But the Nefesh has access to everything. Now, the Nefesh doesn't have memory, it doesn't remember things. That's when we get to the Ruach. But in the case of the Nefesh, it does have access to everything because it is exposed to everything. And as I say, it's got no filters, it just experiences. But when we look on a bigger scale, then, if we consider that everyone and everything is connected, then the Nefesh has access to all of this knowledge. So the Nefesh really does have access to all knowledge, past, present and future. Some people speak of the Akashic record. Not a topic that I've really delved into extensively to find out what's really going on there. But it's, when people speak about the Akashic, they speak about access to knowledge of everything. And this is very similar. So the Nefesh would have access to all of that knowledge and can actually pull it in, but can't retain it, can't retain memory. So you have to create like a union between the Nefesh and the Ruach so that they work together. So everything you experience, you can then retain memory of. Now, it is important to have a strong relationship with the Nefesh. You can speak to it like a friend, like a colleague, and just sort of interact with it every day. The Nefesh is actually, The Nefesh is actually a really powerful thing. I mean, we consider it to be the lower self, and because it's the lower self, we tend to pass it off as being irrelevant, lower, but it's actually quite a powerful part of our soul. The things it can do, it can bilocate. There are stories of people who have been in two places at once, literally. One of the stories I was told was of a young boy who was at boarding school. He actually got ill and passed out and was unconscious for a while. But the doctors came and checked on him, and he was perfectly fine. There was absolutely nothing wrong with him. But at the same time, he went to his grandmother's house and pulled her out of the house just before a gas leak set the house ablaze. And she remembers him being there and pulling her out of the house. So he was in two places at once. And there are a lot of stories like this. So, if we look at Carlos Castaneda and the Toltec warrior path, if you have read the books, you'll probably have come across a lot of incidents that he talks about the astral double, or the double body that can bilocate. So the Nefesh is a very interesting topic to begin with, but we need to have that personal relationship with it, and one way to do this is to use a mirror. And if you're into manifestation technique, you've probably come across the mirror technique, where you actually talk to yourself in the mirror. And this is similar, where for a week, all you do is you just look at yourself in the mirror and you just talk to yourself in the third person, as if the reflection in the mirror were another person. And you just talk to her, just tell her about your day, tell her how you are, or her, and just, talk about your problems, your difficulties and everything else. And just carry on talking like that. Every now and again, just go to the mirror, just talk to the mirror. Talk to this person in the mirror. And after a week, then what you can do is take a pendulum and start doing simple yes and no questions. And you'll find that this starts to create a bond between you and your Nefesh. It doesn't create, you've already got that bond because it's part of your soul, but it strengthens that bond, strengthens the relationship. So, you just carry on doing that so you can use the pendulum, and then after that you can just start talking to your Nefesh and you'll start getting answers. The answers may come in symbols, they may come in visions, they may come in dreams. One thing that does crop up quite a bit is, I think they call them earwigs, where you wake up in the morning, you've got a song stuck in your head. And if that happens when you wake up, and you just can't get it out of your head, then pay attention to it, because it's usually your Nefesh that's trying to give you a message in the song title or in the song words. Now, if we come to the topic of the ego self, we can liken the Nefesh to the subconscious in an aspect, but we can also liken it to the ego self, because the ego self would consequently be the lower self. And I remember years back when I was studying Castaneda's works and the Toltec warrior path. One of the teachers I had at the time suggested that you need to strengthen your ego self. And this is quite adverse to what people usually speak about. They usually say to eliminate your ego. Your ego self is, in many regards or in many instances, is your fight or flight response. And if we don't have a strong ego self, then when in a situation where you are in that fight or flight mode, usually you just instantly do one or the other. If you have a strong ego self, then what happens is that you actually step back and you think for a second, and then you apply the very best action. If you just fly in or fly out, then it might not be the best reaction that you should have. So it's not a case of eliminating the ego self, it's a case of mastering it, becoming the master of the ego self and becoming a master of yourself. And once we have mastery of the ego self, we can then master the other aspects of ourselves. Now, you might wonder, in this fight or flight mode, why it's important to actually stop and consider which action you should take. I mean, I'll give you a perfect example. Years ago, I was at a jazz festival, and everybody was sitting on the grass, getting drunk, getting high, whatever they were doing. And one guy stood up with a gun and started waving this gun around and shouting his head off. Everybody just dispersed, went crazy. Now, in a situation like that, the first reaction is to obviously run. It's your flight response. But the problem is that usually in a situation like that, when somebody's got a gun and they're waving it around, the first person they're going to point the gun at is somebody who is going crazy and waving their arms around and screaming their head off, because that's where the attention goes. But in that situation, I'm not really sure why I did it, but I just didn't even react. I slowly got up and I just slowly walked away, and he didn't even notice me. I wasn't even there to him. I was invisible because I wasn't the one screaming and throwing my arms around, so I wasn't actually putting attention to myself. So in a situation like that, it's not a fight response and it's not a flight response, but it is mastery, because I didn't just suddenly get up and go crazy and run away and draw attention to myself. I just got up calmly and became invisible. Now, to come back to how to create the bond or the relationship between you and your Nefesh, one thing you do need to work with is your Ruach at the same time, because if you just work with your Nefesh, obviously you're not going to retain any memory. So you should work with both at the same time, and one of the ways to do this is just to use breathing exercises. Your Nefesh is housed or focused in your heart center, whereas, your Ruach is housed in your heart center, whereas your Nefesh is housed in your navel area. So if you actually breathe deeply and you do yogic breath, then you pull the air down into your belly, you expand your belly, expand your ribs and then your chest, and then you breathe out again. Then you're actually creating a connection between the two with breath, and you can actually create quite a strong bond between the two and yourself, obviously. And if you actually refer back to my last video with 3 cauldrons, where you've got the cauldron of incubation and the cauldron of motion and the cauldron of wisdom, then you're moving that energy through all 3 cauldrons, and these are the places of the soul, of the Nefesh in the navel area, the Ruach in the heart center where the cauldron of motion is, and then the Neshama in the head, which is the cauldron of wisdom. So you've got this tie back again between traditions where you've got these 3 aspects of the soul, of the energy in the body, and you can work through and unite all 3 and bring energy and move that energy up. Now, if we go to the northern traditions, they actually split the soul into 11 parts. So I'm not going to go extensively into all of them, because this will end up being a very, very long video. But do some research on it. So I'll just go through it quickly. The lich, this is the physical body. Now, being the physical body, a lot of people wonder why it's part of the soul. Well, You know, if you want to have a soul, you've got to house it somewhere. It's got to have a vehicle. So if you don't look after the vehicle, then, you know, the soul's just going to get lost. So the physical body, or the lich, becomes a very important part of the soul in the northern traditions. Next we get the haig, or the hig. I'm not actually sure how it's pronounced, to be honest. Now this is the intellect, but it's a bit of a mash between the Nefesh and the Ruach from the Kabbalistic system. It has rational thought, but it also experiences the world through emotion. And these emotions are very much focused on love and caring, because the word itself, hig, means to love or to care for. So the emotions aren't the irrational, passionate type. They are quite rational and caring. You know, caring for the world, caring for yourself, caring for your partner, things like that. Then we have the mind. It could be pronounced mind. It's M-Y-N-D. So the mind, I'm going to say mend because the word weird is an E where the Y is, so, you know, mend. Now this is a word also relates to love, but the mend is the memory. But this isn't just your memory. This connects you to ancestral memory as well. So this is the memory of all things. Next we have the willa. This is the will. The word itself actually translates to wish or to desire. So this literally is the will. It's the thing that drives us forward to get what we want. Next we have the atham, which is it's literally the breath of life. So if we don't breathe, then we're not alive. At the end of life, then we stop breathing and we die. So, you know, breath is obviously very important. And we can go into other systems, yoga, and the Hindu system of prana, the Chinese and Taoist traditions of, and the Buddhist traditions of qi. It's breath, but it's also energy. So if you look into prana, you'll probably understand better what I mean. Breath is energy, breath is life, and the energy is life. Then we have the hammer. Now the hammer is a quite an interesting part. It's the energy body, but it's the energy body that gets entwined with the physical body, and this energy body protects the soul whenever you are venturing outside the body, the physical body. Now, the hammer can be related quite closely with the Nefesh. The story I told about the boy who collapsed and at boarding school, and then he was also at his grandmother's house. This is the hammer in relation to the northern traditions, and the hammer in powerful magicians can actually shapeshift. So you can actually shapeshift your hammer into an animal or whatever being you want to become. And the hammer, upon death, actually becomes the skin, which is what becomes the phantasm or the ghost of a person after death. So yeah, one of those very interesting parts. The next part is the orlag. Now, this is your personal weird. When we speak about weird, weird is an energy that flows through everything. Going back to Kabbalistic traditions, it would be avir in many cases, because it's the energy that flows outside the body. But as it starts to form our own path, it's the path maker, then orlag becomes our own personal weird. It's how we move forward, what happens in our life. In many cases, it's also karma, because it can relate to past lives and what we're bringing into this life. Another aspect of this to look into would probably be the weird sisters, and how the three sisters actually weave the path of your life forward. How long it would be, what's going to happen, your destiny, your fate, etc., etc. But this path that's being woven before you isn't a defined path from one point to another. It hasn't been woven all the way. It gets woven just before. Imagine like you're stepping on a path, and just before you step on, that path gets woven, and then you step on it and you experience it. But what happens is, because it's getting woven consistently as you step, it all relates to the things that happened in the past. So as you did things in the past, how you reacted, how you got through them, what you did, etc., etc., determines how you're going to move forward in the future. And this is how the path gets woven in front of you. How the Orlag is, it's very closely related to the Fetch. We'll get to that just now. But it also regulates the Mayan, and the Mayan is the next part of the soul. Now the Mayan is the personal power, or the spiritual energy, and we, on a daily basis, we expend and we gain Mayan. And the way we expend and gain Mayan is through the deeds that we do. So if we do good deeds, then we gain Mayan. If we do bad deeds, then we expend Mayan. And if we do bad deeds and we expend Mayan, then what we're supposed to do is to repay the debt of the skilled. And that debt needs to be equal to the same amount of energy that we expended, in order to then balance the system and gain Mayan back again. Then we have the Fetch. Now the Fetch, if you go into Northern traditions, you'll probably find this spoken of a lot. The Fetch, I have found, has two aspects to it. You've got the animal, or the beast, the Fetch beast, and then you have your Fetch mate. Now, the Fetch beast is usually situated in the heart center. And when you are traveling between worlds, you then ride your Fetch beast. It's your, I think we can call it power animal. The problem is that the terms power animal, totem, and things like that have been mashed up a bit, and you know, the definitions have been confused quite a bit. But in my terminology, it would be your power animal. It's your animal self, your animal aspect of you. And as I say, this power animal, you ride it into the underworld, and you ride it back again, and it protects you. Then we get the Fetch mate, which is considered to be the other half of your soul. You know, I say soul in this case, but we're talking about all these different aspects. So, you know, the other half of yourself, let's put it that way. Now, if you look into other traditions, even Christianity, but mostly Hebrew, I mean, Christianity didn't really get into this too much. It is there, but they kind of extracted it, I think. But if we look at Adam Kadmon, now the whole process of the creation of man took place in 4 parts. So as the creation of man was taking place, Adam Kadmon became androgynous, and then became hermaphroditic, and then was split into 2, male and female. And I think, who was the Greek gods, or the Roman gods? Can't remember, but in the Greek or the Roman system, they also speak about the god that split the human into 2 separate parts, into the masculine and the feminine. And this is what happened with the fetch, yourself and the fetch. So if you are masculine, I'm not going to say male because you might be female with a masculine nature, you might be male with a feminine nature, in which case your fetch would be your opposite nature, your opposite gender. Gender. Can I say gender? Am I allowed to say gender? Is that the right word? But anyway, I think you get my point. So if you are of a masculine nature, your fetch will be of a feminine nature and vice versa. And it's the marriage of the two halves of the soul, and we can extend this further into the Holy Guardian Angel. When you attain knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel, there's a marriage that takes place, a union. We can speak about Samadhi when the Shakti energy comes up and meets, joins and unites with the Shiva energy. So all of these aspects, you've got this masculine and feminine that come together and unite and form one body again. And this is obviously the aim of all of these spiritual traditions, really. Okay, so now we go a bit further and we get the mode. And it's a bit difficult to explain the mode, really. It's explained as the totality of being. Now, usually what we speak about is the objective, which is the material world, and the subjective, which is the psychic world. But the old Europeans and the northern folk, they saw this as one entire system. So the physical and the ethereal world weren't separate. So you have this totality of being which takes place, and that is the mode. And then we finally go on to the Wode. This belongs to Woden, the god Woden, or Odin. Now the Wode is considered to be directly from Woden. And as I say, when I say Woden, then I'm referring to Odin. Now, this is very much the connection between ourselves and divinity. During trance states, you might go into a frenzied ecstasy, and this is the passion that brings the inspiration, and this is considered to be directly coming from Woden. So it's the divine union between self and divinity, self and Woden, self and God, whatever religion you may be. Now this state of Wode, it can often lead to mental illness and craziness, just complete insanity. But on the other hand, it can also lead to balance, artistic inspiration and expression, and this is very much, I'd say this is very much connected with Kundalini, actually, if we look into the system of the yoga systems and the tantras. Because with Kundalini, if a person's Kundalini is raised, then they often become very inspired. The great artists, the great musicians, these are people that have raised Kundalini, if that's a term, if that's a terminology I can use, I'm not sure. But it's very similar here. Wode is that energy, that power that comes through and inspires us, and so it created the bards. In the druidic tradition, it created the bards, the Fili, people like that. So all of these inspired people, the artists, the musicians, the great men and women of society. These are the people who are connected to Wode and have this inspired, passionate energy running through them. They don't go into frenzy, ecstasy, obviously, on a daily basis, but I'm sure they got there at some point. Anyway, so that ends the discussion on the soul that I wanted to just take you through. Again, very extensive topic, so one you might want to actually do further study into, especially connected to the traditional path that you are following. You know, every traditional path has their own view on the soul itself and the parts of the soul, how it's split up, and what each part actually represents and the function that it has. So definitely go and do some further study into it. You know, it's a very important topic. We can't say it's not important, because being spiritual people, you know, we have to consider the soul, obviously. So yeah, go and check it out, do some Googling, do some research, have some discussions with other people, and have discussions from people from different traditions and paths and find out their views and opinions. Just pick their brains. And anyway, that's me for now. Thanks and cheers.